Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on the transition from primary school to secondary school for dyslexic learners with the British Dyslexia Association. This is our first webinar that we're holding in conjunction with the BDA, but we will have some more later this year and going into next year. My name is Laura Klein, and I'm the Operations and Services Director for Support Network, which is the personal advice and support charity for members of the IMechE and their family. I'm shortly going to hand over to Amanda, who is, amongst other things, a specialist dyslexic trainer at the BDA and will be delivering the content today. We're recording today's webinar, and all delegates will be sent a copy of the recording, along with any slides and resources that Amanda makes reference to, within a week or so of today's date. So if you are affected by technical issues, you will be able to watch at a later date. Today's webinar will last approximately 50 minutes and then be followed by a Q&A session. You can ask your questions through the Q&A box, where all messages are private, and we will try and answer all questions at the end of the session. You can also use the chat box, but be careful on that one, on whether you're sending it to everybody or just hosts and panelists. You need to choose who you select. Okay, so Amanda, over to you.
Oh, thank you very much, Laura. Thank you for that introduction. Just let me tell you a little bit about my background. Before I worked for the BDA, I worked in secondary school for about 14 years, and I supported and provided tutoring to specialist dyslexia tutoring for SEND learners for all the way from year 7 to year 11. So I've got quite an extensive experience of being in secondary school and following the journey of some learners in the classroom. This is what we're going to cover today. I want to give you an understanding of what dyslexia is. We'll look at the differences between primary and secondary school. We'll look at how the learners are expected to have their own independence in secondary school. We'll also look at trying to understand dyslexic behaviours that may not have been seen within primary school, and finally, how to support the young learners. The last thing I want to quickly talk about is how the BDA can help, and so that you've got some reference to be able to get in touch with us if you need to. If you need to, please switch on closed captions or transcriptions in your settings. So let's have a look at dyslexia. I want to give you an understanding of what dyslexia is and how it affects individuals. But it's really important to start off on a positive note when we talk about dyslexia. Everybody that you can see on the screen has been successful in their own right, and you can see a wide variety of skill sets. There are inventors, singer-songwriters, authors, politicians, people in sport, movie directors. There's lots and lots of skills that you can see on the screen. And what these individuals have been able to do is to harness their skills to become famous and successful. And so this is the message really that we do need to give to our young people, that regardless of whether you're dyslexic or neurodiverse in any way, you'll be able to hone in on what you are very good at and become very successful in that. And when we think about these kind of positive strengths, this is a real life example of somebody who is dyslexic, not famous, but incredibly successful. This is Frances Akinde. She is an author. She started off as an art teacher, worked lots of different positions to become a head teacher in a special school. She's lived her experience through her advocacy, her inclusion, and her neurodiversity. So while she was rising to head teacher, she had 5 children. She's gained national recognition through the BBC News. She contributes to the Jamie Oliver's Dyslexia Revolution, as do the BDA. And so she's a local authority advisor now, and she's got lots of strings to her bow with regards to inclusion. She's known for her warmth. She's very committed, and she champions spaces where all children and educators can thrive. And so this is a real life example of somebody who has used her dyslexic skills to her advantage to be able to pass on the message of how fantastic being dyslexic can be. the kind of strengths that we look for, and remember as well, this is going to be a cluster of some of these. Not everybody is going to have all of these positive strengths, but it could be that you notice that your child has that ability to visualize very often in 3D, and consequently, they have very practical and problem solving skills, often very lateral thinking. They can see the bigger picture. Sometimes good visual spatial awareness, often in data sets as well. They can be very creative. They can think outside of the box. Often very good verbal communication. And I saw that in my classrooms where I could have some fantastic conversations with my young learners, from politics to current affairs to even just the gossip that's on the yard. And yet there would be very little on the page. And that is one big indicator for me. That was something that I used to look out for the most. What you might also notice is high levels of motivation and persistence, and this is where the masking can come in. Your children might put in maybe 3 or 4 hours more than somebody who is not dyslexic to complete a written task or a literacy task. And so what the teacher doesn't see is the amount of time and effort it goes into completing the same kind of tasks that everybody is set all at the same time. So again, remembering as well that your young person might have a cluster of some of these positive strengths, as well as some of the challenges that we will talk about today. Just to give you some idea of statistics, there's around about 10% of our UK population who are diagnosed with dyslexia. It's around about 6.5 million people in our country. It does affect both men and women, boys and girls, and there is a genetic link. So if you do think that dyslexia is in your immediate family, have a look at the wider family tree as well. There are some suggestions that there could be up to 20% of our UK population who are at least identified with literacy difficulties because they're undiagnosed. They might describe themselves as, I just don't enjoy reading. It takes me a long time and I can't spell for toffee. And those are those kind of people who have been able to use their own strategies to be able to navigate through their education and through their work life without being too, you find it too difficult to flag up a dyslexia assessment. And so bear that in mind when we think about those people with dyslexia or a literacy difficulty. Some other statistics I want to bring to your attention. And when you get the PDF copy of the slides, you'll be able to click on these links to be able to read the whole report yourself. But the BDA have created a survey and some trying to get some data that there's around about 80% of dyslexic pupils leave school without a diagnosis. That's a lot, isn't it? One of the main reasons is cost. We know that we can't get a diagnosis on the NHS because it's not a medical diagnosis, it's an educational diagnosis, and the school funding is not going to be able to cover a full diagnostic assessment for 10% of their school population. And so one of the reasons why we have come together with Francis Akinde and Jamie Oliver is to try and bring that awareness for the younger learners, particularly in primary schools, so that they are able to have the correct support and they don't start to fall behind. It might be that 80% statistic stays because of funding, but hopefully what we want to do is at least identify some of our young learners. Some further reading for you. There's a general agreement, depending on which study you read, that there's about 30% of inmates in prison who are dyslexic. And again, depending on which one you read, some suggest it's up to 60% because of that grey area. Students sometimes find themselves on that school to prison pipeline. They completely disengage with their education because it's not set up for them to learn. We know that dyslexics have a different way of learning, and often that can be quite stagnant. If they don't follow the rules of the classroom, if they can't follow the same learning as everybody else, they might feel a bit like a square peg in a round hole, and so they might become disengaged in their education and sadly find a different path. On the other side of the scale, however, we need to celebrate the fact that there's around about 40% of self-made millionaires who are dyslexic or at least show the signs of dyslexia. And so again, it comes back to the messaging from that first slide that I show you. What kind of messaging are we providing to our young generation? Is it that, if you don't have your literacy skills, you're not going to be able to get your qualifications, you're not going to be able to be successful in anything? Or are they having a very positive message sent to them that regardless of your literacy skills, what we will do is we will equalize the opportunity to demonstrate your knowledge through the exam system so that you can become successful and harness the skills that you have got instead of using the difficulties that you have as a barrier. And so I consider everybody to be an educator. Regardless of whether you're in school, whether you're in the family home, or whether you're in the workplace, we are all educators. And hopefully we will be able, as a society, to influence these statistics, to have less people with dyslexia or literacy difficulties in the prison system, and more who are being much more financially successful within our society. We need to consider the behaviours of some of our young people, our young learners. They very often are judged on their surface behaviour. And the kind of things that you might see is somebody who has some kind of an avoidance tactic. That's their coping mechanism. And it might be that they avoid any kind of task that involves reading or writing or spelling because they find it really challenging and they have that fear of failure or embarrassment. And it might include things like, I need to sharpen my pencil, or I've broken my pen, or I need to find something in my bag, or I've lost my pencil case, I need to go somewhere else and find it. All of those are avoidance techniques that they have kind of built up subconsciously over time. And it's because they may in the past have been ridiculed, or they feel that they don't perform the same as the rest of their peers. It could be that they just completely resign themselves to the fact that they just can't do it. And over time, it might be that they lose motivation for their kind of academic pursuits, feeling that no matter how hard they try, they won't succeed. And again, it leads to that lack of engagement and effort in school. Because if you are putting so much effort into writing something and then it's still being criticized and being called lazy when all you do is try harder, you can just imagine that young person is just wanting to give up. Depending on the personality, to divert attention away from their struggles, some might act out in class. And this can include things like disruptive behaviour or telling jokes or distracting other learners. But it's a way to avoid tasks that highlight what it is that they're struggling with. You may see an emotional impact, and it can significantly affect a child's self-esteem and confidence. And they might feel frustrated, they might feel anxious or depressed due to the struggles that they are having with their reading and writing. If they are trying to mask it, that emotional toil can be kind of suppressed until it explodes, and it might have a complete withdrawal, or it might lead to aggression. Now, family dynamics is a crucial role. If there is family stress, if there is a lack of understanding or that inconsistent support, it can really exacerbate these kind of behavioural issues. And again, expecting somebody to not succeed is almost like giving them a green light to just not even try. Because again, like I've just said, if you're called lazy all of the time, and that's all they're doing is trying to try hard, it can be absolutely soul destroying. Conversely, though, if there is a very supportive and understanding family, it can help to mitigate these kind of behaviours. The learning environment is important too. That includes things like the relationship with teachers and their peers. All of those can impact the behaviour. If there is a lack of support and understanding at school, it leads to that increased behavioural issue. Whereas if there is a very supportive school environment, it can help to manage them. And if we address all of these layers, collectively together as parents, as educators, as professionals, we can help to develop a really effective strategies to help support learners to help improve their behaviour. Because right at the very core of it, the root could be that that learner is dyslexic. Now, on the next slide, I've got a short video to show you. It illustrates dyslexia beautifully, and I'll talk about it in more detail after it's finished. I would like to apologise. There will be an advert on this, but I'll skip it as quickly as I can.
What if you could send money overseas in seconds?
Take a moment to read the following. How was that? Frustrating? Slow? What were those sentences about? They're actually a simulation of the experience of dyslexia, designed to make you decode each word. Those with dyslexia experience that laborious pace every time they read. When most people think of dyslexia, they think of seeing letters and words backwards, like seeing B as D and vice versa, or they might think people with dyslexia see saw as was. The truth is, people with dyslexia see things the same way as everyone else. Dyslexia is caused by a phonological processing problem, meaning people affected by it have trouble not with seeing language, but with manipulating it. For example, if you heard the word cat and then someone asked you, remove the C, what word would you have left? At. This can be difficult for those with dyslexia. Given a word in isolation like fantastic, students with dyslexia need to break the word into parts to read it. Fan, tas, tick. Time spent decoding makes it hard to keep up with peers and gain sufficient comprehension. Spelling words phonetically like STIK for stick and FRENS for friends is also common. These difficulties are more widespread and varied than commonly imagined. Dyslexia affects up to 1 in 5 people. It occurs on a continuum. One person might have mild dyslexia, while the next person has a profound case of it. Dyslexia also runs in families. It's common to see one family member who has trouble spelling, while another family member has severe difficulty decoding even one-syllable words like catch. The continuum and distribution of dyslexia suggest a broader principle to bear in mind as we look at how the brains of those with dyslexia process language. Neurodiversity is the idea that because all our brains show differences in structure and function, we shouldn't be so quick to label every deviation from the norm as a pathological disorder, or dismiss people living with these variations as defective. People with neurobiological variations like dyslexia, including such creative and inventive individuals as Picasso, Muhammad Ali, Whoopi Goldberg, Steven Spielberg, and Cher, clearly have every capacity to be brilliant and successful in life. So here's the special way the brains of those with dyslexia work. The brain is divided into 2 hemispheres. The left hemisphere is generally in charge of language and ultimately reading, while the right typically handles spatial activities. fMRI studies have found that the brains of those with dyslexia rely more on the right hemisphere and frontal lobe than the brains of those without it. This means when they read a word, it takes a longer trip through their brain and can get delayed in the frontal lobe. Because of this neurobiological glitch, they read with more difficulty. But those with dyslexia can physically change their brain and improve their reading. With an intensive multisensory intervention that breaks the language down and teaches the reader to decode based on syllable types and spelling rules, the brains of those with dyslexia begin using the left hemisphere more efficiently while reading. and their reading improves. The intervention works because it locates dyslexia appropriately as a functional variation in the brain, which naturally shows all sorts of variations from one person to another. Neurodiversity emphasizes this spectrum of brain function in all humans and suggests that to better understand the perspectives of those around us, we should try to not only see the world through their eyes, but understand it through their brains.
Okay, so let's have a look at that in a little more detail. The way that dyslexia affects the brain is in three main areas: phonological awareness, verbal memory, and verbal processing speed. And each individual will have their own unique pattern. And so it's sometimes if you notice that a learner is able to overcome their phonological awareness challenges, it doesn't mean that they're not dyslexic. They could have the main difficulties in their verbal memory and their verbal processing speed. So we need to bear that in mind. When we think about phonological awareness, it's understanding that there is the squiggles on the page make a sound. The sound comes together to make a word. The words come together to make a sentence. So that's your phonological awareness, really, in a nutshell. What we do know from fMRI studies is that for somebody who is not dyslexic, in our traditional way of teaching, all of that really triggers these areas of the brain, and they're able to build the neural pathways. They can improve that literacy skill quite easily with that normal traditional way of teaching. Dyslexic readers, however, need a different way of teaching, and that's what we call multisensory teaching, whereby there are layers of visual, auditory, kinesthetic, all of those, so that independent layer can trigger these areas and eventually build the neural pathways to build the skill. Remembering as well that our dyslexic learners use their right side of the brain more efficiently than their left side, and it's the left side where this literacy skill is built. So what we need to make sure that multisensory teaching, if it's identified at an early age, follows that learner right the way through to secondary school and beyond, so that they can continue to learn in that different way than everybody else. They also have a difficulty with their memory shelf. So we all have a memory shelf here at the front of our brains. When we're thinking of something, we unconsciously look up because the information is here. For those who are not dyslexic, you can probably hold on to maybe 7 or 8 books or nuggets of information without any difficulty. However, for somebody who is dyslexic, they may only be able to hold on to 2 or 3. If you add a new one on, the first one will drop off. And so that short-term memory and their working memory is something that is particularly, they find that particularly difficult. Things like sequencing, remembering a set of instructions. There is also a difficulty with their verbal processing speed as well. So like in the video, there was that blue blob that came to the left side of the brain. I find it it's behind our left ear. I call it our filing cabinet of knowledge. Now, if you're using your left side more efficiently, then it's very easy to find something in your filing cabinet of knowledge. It's a bit like driving down the motorway with no other cars. You can find it super fast in milliseconds. Whereas if you're using your right side of the brain more efficiently, you have a longer journey to take to find something in your filing cabinet of knowledge. And it's very much like driving down the scenic route. Now, it's not to say that you're not going to find that information. It might just be delayed in comparison to somebody else. And so given thinking time as the norm, it would be really helpful for those people who are dyslexic. You might notice behaviours like shouting out in the classroom or interrupting a conversation. And what is happening is they found information in their filing cabinet of knowledge. They put it in on their shelf, and they need to capture that as quickly as possible. And so that's the kind of behaviour, if somebody that could be demonstrating if you have this combination of a slower verbal processing speed and a short memory shelf. What I want to look at is the differences between primary and secondary. For some, it's going to be a very new experience. You may have been many years as a parent since you went last time. And it could, you know, be something of a bit of a shock, or it might be that you are going to worry about your children. They do differ significantly in several key areas, and it reflects that development stages of the children. Physically, primary schools tend to be smaller. There's lots of colourful, playful environments tailored to young children, including things like child-sized furniture, outdoor play areas. Whereas in contrast, in secondary schools, they are much larger generally, more formal. There is specialised rooms like science labs and sport facilities as well. If we think about emotionally, in a primary school, students are much more dependent on one teacher in the classroom. It might be that they form very simple and play-based friendships, while in secondary school, they begin then to seek independence and they navigate more complex social dynamics and emotional challenges because they're meeting up with new people that they've never met before, and they are finding out where they sit emotionally in a larger group of learners. In terms of size of the schools, primary schools usually have fewer classrooms. They have a smaller student population, typically ranging maybe between 100 and 400-ish pupils, whereas secondary schools are much larger, often accommodating 500 to 1,500 students with bigger class sizes. There is a lot more movement between subjects and teachers. And these kind of differences they reflect the shift from their early childhood education to adolescent learning and development. And it might take our dyslexic learners longer to familiarize themselves with their secondary school because of the short-term memory, because of the processing speed. And I know that some of my year 7 students who came in kept getting lost around the school. And then 4 or 5 weeks later, they were still getting lost. But it wasn't understood that from their perspective, they couldn't remember where everything was. And so it was read that they were automatically just being quite naughty and internal truanting. Whereas if they were to be able to pick out and unpick the reasons why, it might be because there is no signs in and around the corridors so that they can find their way around them easily enough. It's all written instead of having a visual clue as to where everything is. And so when you are visiting your new secondary school, bear that in mind and try and have your children to visualize with an image in their head parts of the school so that they can remember kind of whereabouts it is. Sometimes the challenge can be the timetable. And what I used to do, I used to end up doing about 40 or 50 new timetables at the beginning of the year to simplify it. Because very often when it's printed out, it's all coded and everything, and it's quite difficult. So I would color code it. So Monday would be pink, or Tuesday would be green, and so on and so on. And so I would help them to navigate using a much simplified version, which is something that you might want to consider when you see that timetable for the first time. When your children transition up to secondary school, it's expected that they start to become much more independent themselves. They are expected to be able to develop it themselves, their kind of own transition from primary school to secondary school, both in their academic and their personal areas. There will be some support there. There will be support there. But what they are aiming to do is for them to start to learn how to become young adults. And so they will start then to become much more self-reliant, confident and organized. And even things like not walking them to school. They have to become independent themselves, getting the bus for the first time possibly, and situations like that. For things like academic independence, they are expected to organise their own homework, take responsibility for their own learning, and develop these kind of subject-specific skills that they may not have come across before. So things like the first introduction to a science lab, for example, or a woodwork class. They are expected to be able to manage that and start to become a little more mature. With things like organisational skills, they will be expected to pack their own equipment, follow their own timetable, and plan their own daily routines. So it might be that they decide that they want to do a lunchtime club and bring a packed lunch for that day. So it might just be helping them to organise themselves. The social and emotional, they'll be making new friends. They'll be able, they're expected to try and start to manage their own emotions as they transition between the key stages. But also know where to seek help if they need it, and to join new activities and to broaden their horizons, really. And again, the school navigation between moving classrooms, understanding the rules and the policies, and the polite way to communicate with teachers, and knowing the rules and regulations around all of that. And it's sometimes it's almost kind of taken as a given that all of our young learners are going to be able to do that themselves, but not everybody can. And it might be that somebody is quite emotionally developed. However, there might be just one area that they're really, really struggling with, and they need that specific support. So don't be afraid to find out what support is available in the secondary school if your child has got a particular area of need with any of these kind of areas. So, understanding dyslexic behaviours that might not be seen in primary school. So as we go through that transition, you might start to see things that has never cropped up before. And it might be because they are having to deal with these new aspects of learning. So it might be that they have a difficulty more with their memory, and that's because they're having to remember more. And remembering as well that they've only have that short memory shelf, it's going to be really difficult. So having more subjects and more teachers, even the names of all of the teachers, there's a lot to remember. There are different expectations, there are different homework tasks and deadlines. And so to have to remember all of that can be really overwhelming. And so we need to remember that if that is something that your child is finding difficult, that needs to be communicated with the school and put some support in place. Abstract concepts in things like science and maths, they require a really deeper cognitive processing. Remembering as well what I said a little bit earlier about that multisensory way of learning. Do not be afraid to continue that multisensory way of learning and using concrete materials in things like maths lessons to help to understand with that cognitive processing. That deeper understanding still needs those things like the Dean's blocks, or maybe a visual or a mind map or a Venn diagram to be able to see the information, and it needs to be remembered that they can't automatically go straight into the abstract aspect of learning. They do need that transition. And things like revision and exam preparation, the demand on their long-term memory skills, which is already still developing in adolescence, can have a real effect on these young people that are moving into this new way of learning. And so you've got, we need to talk to your child, find the best way for revision. I used to do a lot of games. I used to make up games like Snakes and Ladders and Connect Four and anything really. And before they took their turn, they had to answer a revision question. Something as simple as that. It gives you that kind of competitive edge as well in a very relaxed environment, because what we need to do is to remove the stress away from having to remember anything. So their organisational difficulties, they often struggle with managing timetables, and I've given you an idea of how to manage that. Remembering which books or equipment to bring in for each lesson, colour coding them can be really useful as well. So even just putting a coloured sticker for a particular lesson, or coordinating that with a coloured timetable as they pack their bag the night before, making sure that you go through that routine at home would be really useful for them. Homework tracking becomes harder with multiple subjects and teachers assigning tasks. And it's almost assumed sometimes that they know how to use a planner, a homework planner. And that isn't always the case if they've never used it before. So be mindful to go through and make sure that the school is teaching explicitly how to use that homework planner. And things like keeping folders, notes, and any kind of digital files organized can be overwhelming if they don't have that guidance. So also explain to the school and to use those kind of systems at home to make sure that everything is organized, and teach your child how to do it rather than doing everything for them. Things like the transition and routine. So moving between classrooms and teachers can be disorientating, especially for those who are only used to one teacher in a primary school. And so making sure that they have a buddy, or that they know, or maybe they have a walkthrough in the morning before they go to the lesson one, because time management becomes really crucial. Dyslexic learners do find it hard to balance homework, schoolwork, social life, extracurriculars as well. Maybe using a digital timer or a shared family calendar can be really useful for that. And the emotional impact, remember as well that this is something really new for your child. These kind of academic pressures can lead to things like stress and anxiety and low self-esteem, especially if they feel like they're falling behind and they haven't got the support. So talking to them every day, finding out, and reading their body language as well, how they are feeling about the day, what went well, as well as what didn't go quite so well. And remember as well, some of the learners feel embarrassed to ask for help because they feel that they're going to be judged from their peers or their teachers. Having that inclusive way of support is really crucial. And so this kind of messaging when you are contacting the school is important as well. So it might be, right, okay, this is what I'll need to be aware of. How do I support my child? So when we think about academic independence, we need to do things like encourage the use of planners or a homework app, or even create a system at home that helps you to track those and develop those skills together. If it's possible, try and give them a quiet study space, even if it's at the local library, if it's close by. Break tasks into manageable steps. I used to use a lot of tick lists for my learners, and discuss the subject content to build that understanding. And I know from my own children going through secondary school, sometimes you can't remember how you need to do these maths equations. But the internet is a wonderful thing, and these up-to-date apps can be really, really helpful. So to help to build that understanding, have it a real group activity if there is that possibility. So practice packing the school bag together the night before. Always review the timetable daily the night before so they know what to expect the next day. And create those morning and evening routines using visual checklists for essential things. I had one parent who used Alexa for everything. And so if you have that opportunity to have a voice to remind you what time it is, how long you've got left, then, you know, use that. She used to say, well, we've got 2 songs left before we need to get out the door. And so that routine would play a particular song, or 2 particular songs, to give them that idea of time before they had to leave. So different ways of doing things like that. With their social and emotional support, talk about their friendships and their feelings. If you need to, go through a role play for something like joining a club. If they find something that's really interesting. I know we used to have a very busy Lego club after school, just so that some of our learners could just de-stress and relax before they went home. Some others took up boxing in the gym, you know, just anything like that, just so that they can decompress before they actually get home. Celebrate achievements, small achievements even, and you know, the effort that it takes for them to be able to achieve something as well is just as important as the academic equivalent. And visit the school and walk through the timetable if necessary, or if you're not able to do that, maybe an older brother or sister or family member or a teaching assistant can help them with something like that. And of course, look at the school rules together, remember what they can and can't do, remembering as well that your home rules will probably reflect quite a lot on the school rules as well. And encourage that respectful communication with teachers. It's easy to criticize, but it's harder to work together to help give that support. And that really positive communication with Senkos and form teachers and you know, head of years and things like that is really important, to have that really good working relationship so that you are able to have that support for your child. Oops, I've gone backwards for some reason. So let's have a look at how teachers can then support learners. Now, if you need to use this and talk to teachers within the school, head of years, form tutors, that type of thing. What we can do with teachers is things like making sure that they are modelled, any kind of study skills and organisation strategies that works within the school. Use a consistent homework system. It might be that there is a homework club at the end of the school day. So if they don't have that quiet place at home, they will, you know, be able to work with somebody in school to be able to complete those tasks. Scaffolding and encouraging subject-specific thinking and problem solving, which is something that they might be actually really good at. All of these things, like reinforcing routines and expectations, providing visual aids, changing the timetables, giving them checklists, allowing them to organise their materials and reflect on their day. Like I've just said, it might be just that ability to just go and visit somebody at the end of the day, just to decompress and to reflect on how they've gone through the day and how they can maybe amend something if something hasn't gone quite right. Creating really warm, welcoming environment, monitoring social dynamics and offering support, encouraging open communication and emotional literacy. And promoting inclusion through group work and activities. All of these things is something that really should be worked on, not from the academic side of it, but from the social and emotional side of support as well within that school. If the teachers are able to offer them these kind of orientation sessions and classroom tours, being clear and consistent with rules and expectations, and encourage the learners to ask questions and seek help from staff. I do remember one young man in particular, when he first came to join us the first week of September, he hid under the desk. I know with lots and lots of work, we got to a point where he then eventually was doing the school tours. And so that work can be done. It might take a long time, expect it to take a long time, but eventually all of that confidence will come through. And of course, their personal growth. encourage them to set their personal targets and review their progress, celebrate their effort and their resilience, encouraging self-reflection and ownership of learning, and provide mentoring or pastoral support where needed. And this kind of goes hand in hand with parents as well. So we need to have open communication and giving them that that positive reinforcement of, things that they have achieved and being able to achieve. So knowing where to go for help is really important, and the BDA can help. I know we have a very good relationship with regards to the support for dyslexia assessments. Laura, do you want to just pop on and just explain a little bit more about the relationship that you have with us with regards to the assessments?
Yes, thank you very much, Amanda. It was really just to flag to everybody that if you're an IMechE member or the immediate family of the IMechE member, so their spouse, their partner, their children, their parents, that we can look to help with the cost of a dyslexia assessment. We do this through the BDA, and you would need to pay 10% yourself, and we would cover the other 90%. So this becomes a much more affordable thing to do. For anyone who would struggle with that 10%, we also have some grant funding that we can look at. That's more means tested. But if anyone has any questions about how to access that support, use more information on our website in the section on dyslexia, or you can contact me directly. Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks very much, Laura. And that would be an absolute massive help, because very often that is the barrier to not getting the right support for your child. So if you are able to take advantage of that offer, I would suggest that you do, because it's a really fantastic offer. If you want to have a look at our website, then if you need to, you can click on this icon here and this ribbon will open up. We have full access to everything on our website, and it really is our greatest resource. There's a lot of information on there. You might want to have a look at our dyslexia community that is up and down the country. You might want to join us and register as a member. It might be that you would like our free newsletter every month, just so that you can keep up to date with what is happening. But yeah, there's a lot of information on there. If you would like to have a little look at that, you're very welcome to. We have a BDA helpline, and this is operated with volunteers who are specialists in the sector. So it might be that you are able to get through and have a chat with somebody who is a dyslexia assessor, or a specialist dyslexia tutor, or an educational psychologist. Whoever they are, there will be experts in the field to give you some real advice. We have a telephone number, we have an email address, we also have our social media platforms and the contact form on the website. So there's lots of ways that you can get in touch with us if you wanted to. Like I said, we do have those diagnostic assessments with the BDA, but I would suggest going through the IMechE service so that you can get that discount, which is very, very helpful. If you are looking for a particular school, have a look out to see if they have the BDA Dyslexia Friendly Quality Mark. It's a very positive statement to let all parents know that that school is a really good place for dyslexic individuals. They have the whole structure of the school set around understanding dyslexia and the different ways of learning for that child. So yeah, please have a look. It should be on our website to see if a school that you're looking for is on that list or not. If it's not, ask them if they would like to do that, because not only will it be a really good opportunity for you as a parent and your child, it will be it's universal multisensory teaching for everybody, and it's a really good pull for parents who are looking for an understanding school. And if you wanted to, you can do some more training. There is a section for parents and carers, and those that are targeted towards you. Even just understanding the fundamentals of dyslexia, you can have a look at our website to do some e-learning yourself. So yeah, there's all of the additional training that you might need. And this is our dyslexia community. So it's free to join. And if you join, you have things like the monthly e-newsletter. We keep you up to date with the news and developments. There is opportunities to have support and to get involved with our campaigns as well, particularly at government level. And we're hoping to make a lot of change recently. And you'll be able to access community events and, of course, read all of our reports that we publish as well. So I think I'm just about on time, Laura. Before we go into Q&A, if you're able to, please do scan the QR code that is on the screen, and that will ask for immediate feedback on the content. But I'm sure, Laura, you might have your own questionnaire later and at a later date.
No, we were happy to use yours. So if
Oh,
anybody
fantastic.
can give some feedback, that's brilliant, because it helps us build on future webinars that we might want to run with the BDA and what topics people would like to see. And then that's great. So we'll leave that up for a few more seconds, Amanda. And then if we close that down, we can move on to the questions section. So thank you very much for a really interesting webinar and covering all those points. If anybody does have any questions live, if you want to put them in the Q&A box, we can go from there. And let's get started with what we've had come in so far. Okay, Amanda, the first question we've had is, how early should transition planning begin? Our son is in year 5, and is that too early to try and get them ready for what we expect high school to be like?
No, not at all. Year 5 is a perfect time. I know that when we did our school open evenings, we invited year 5 and year 6. And it's a really good opportunity to be able to talk to subject specific teachers to find out what kind of alternative or different methods of teaching, rather than just the simple traditional way of teaching. Is it considered multisensory? Talk to your Senko. What kind of additional support might they be able to provide with things like the navigation of the school, for example? Do they have, check out whether they have a color coding system with the corridors and different subjects and so on. And if not, then that is something that you might want to think about introducing with your child as well. It's a really nice opportunity to get a feel of the school. And let your child lead that as much as possible, so that if they feel that they're going to be able to navigate that school, then do everything that you can to support that transition.
Perfect. Great. So the next question was, what sort of reasonable adjustments can we ask for? This is for someone's daughter, and how do they go about that without looking too pushy or sort of confrontational?
Yeah, so it depends on that individual. So if they're very much a visual learner, encouraging, particularly at things like parents' evening, try and meet as many of the teachers as possible and explain that that your child is very much finds it easy to extract information from visuals like infographics or diagrams, and rather than a huge amount of text. Other support might include things like an emotional support and making sure that they stay organized, because that can be particularly overwhelming if they have that short-term memory difficulty. And just giving them visual clues, just checking in on them, making sure that they are okay. Having somebody who they can trust in a safe space. I used to have lots of learners come to me in year 7 who just needed to just kind of touch base, basically during break times and lunch times, just so that they could just talk about what had happened that day, if they had any difficulties. So those kind of like emotional supports, if they have that special relationship with a member of staff, it's always nice to be able to do that. And then things like all the kind of organizations is making sure that because they will have a completely different system with their homework and their books or their folders and things like that, making sure that they are able to identify where they are finding it difficult so that you can put the right support in. So there's lots of different things that you can work with. With regards to not being a pushy parent, try and keep on a positive note, and not only phone up and give criticism when something has gone wrong, but also phone up and praise when your child has come home and has had a really good day, because that is just as important as that negative feedback for the teaching staff. That's the bit that they don't see. They only see some of the negative things when things are starting to unravel. When they are being very positive about their school environment, also give that feedback as well. And that kind of balances it out, and they're more likely then to go, right, okay, well, let's put this other support in because I know that they appreciate that. So it is a real balancing act.
Yeah, brilliant. And the last question we've had in so far is there any technology or apps that we should consider for the home to help with learning?
Oh, there's lots of things you can do. And in fact, the BDA have a free assistive technology introduction course that anybody can apply for. But things like the reading apps, so on mobile phones or tablets, where you can just take a photograph of a piece of a book page and it will read it out for you. There are things like transcription apps that can be really helpful. So if your child is much more verbally able to demonstrate their knowledge, get them to talk into it to answer a question, and then you can edit it before you either write it down or put it on your document. Lots of different things like that is really good. And digital organisers with a little digital pop-up to say you need to make sure that this week you've got to take your ingredients for cooking in, that type of thing. So just keeping on top of that, really.
Brilliant. That was great. Thank you so much, Amanda. That's all the questions we've had come in for now. So thank you for addressing all of those. As I mentioned earlier, today's recording will be sent to all of our delegates, along with Amanda's slides and also some other resources that the BDA have put together. You should get those. It's only about a week and a half or so by the time I've got the sort of edit through and got them all out to people. You'll also be able to see our next webinar with the BDA, which is Positive Support for Dyslexic Loved Ones, on the 18th of November. That's live, the booking link's live on our website. So if you want to sign up for that one, again, you can then attend it live, or you can, if you register it, you'll be sent a recording so you can watch that at your leisure. We have a whole range of webinars on other topics, on parenting, on wellbeing, and on financial needs, also on our website. So please do have a look if you think any of them would be of interest. So finally, all it is a thanks again, Amanda, for a really interesting webinar, and
You're
for all
welcome.
our delegates for joining us today.
Okay.
Bye.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.